good afternoon, happy Monday and welcome to our Monday Live. Joined today by Matt. Stuart's on the other side of the Atlantic playing with his toy cars. So Matt's joined us this time. Hopefully Stuart's watching, he's going to give us some abuse on the iPad. So Matt's with me today. We're going to go over everything that's happened at the weekend. Obviously a bit of news this week with the ball rollback, which we'll discuss. And feel free to fire any questions on any of the subject matters. But I think first things up, Tiger.
Yeah, it's nice to see him back. Well, it's nice to see him back for 10 holes around, but I think it was safe to say his body wasn't quite where he may have wanted it to be. No,
I think to be fair, I mean, what would I say, the last time he'd played was 18 months ago or so. I think the fact that he played as well as he did for a chunk of the round, and he alluded to one tournament a month, I think is probably where we're going to see him. But we said earlier, there is only one person that I'm going to watch at 8:30 on a Thursday evening play 2 holes of golf, and that's him.
Yeah, he still has that pull factor. No matter what version of Tiger you get, people are going to tune in.
So Scheffler winning, looked like new putter in the bag. I think the stats were #1 in every department last year on tour and 160th putting, I believe.
Yes.
So
and new driver and fairway.
Yeah, starting to see the new products coming out. So we're going to see obviously TaylorMade's new products there with Tiger and Scotty Scheffler, and Rory wasn't playing, but going to start to see Callaway's and Cobra, some of their products coming out the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And we can talk about those in January.
Yes.
So not allowed to yet.
Lips are sealed until then. And the other one I think went a little under the radar was Zalatoris being back.
Yeah.
From his back issues and the surgeries that. Well, I think at one point he thought that might have been it. So it was nice to see him back. Okay.
When was his last tournament?
Was it even this year?
Don't think it was this year.
So maybe middle of last.
So big deal actually. I like Zalatoris. I think he's just his all-around game, how good he was for actually a prolonged period of time, and I quite like the way he spoke when the whole live thing started up. Just the way he just really balanced his views about the money amounts and what it all meant. I think he's just genuinely a good guy, and I think it'd be great to see him just build his game building back up this year as well.
It'll be interesting to see once he gets himself back in a little bit more form. It'll be interesting to see with that putter change, because he's made a switch to an arm lock Mes Max, as has half of the tour it seems these days.
Yeah, hopefully our demos are going to arrive soon.
Yes,
because clearly all the tour usage has taken them all.
But it's nice to see that he might have actually found a putter that might get rid of that terrifying wobble that we never like to see. That
was quite
we
scary.
Can almost guarantee will come out whenever he's got a putt.
And then in the other news in world golf, a couple of live wins.
Yes.
Joaquim Niemann and Dean Burmester going back to back, winning again in South Africa.
That's a big one for them. 2 out of 3, and the only one they didn't win is the one they weren't invited to.
I think Burmester made the cut in the number.
Yep.
And then went 60.
And said he was ill and wasn't sure if he'd actually complete the weekend, and then shot a silly number.
Was it 65, 68?
Yes.
I think, yeah. So, and then Australian Open, Niemann in the playoff.
Yeah.
Playing an interesting bag setup.
Yeah, it was driver 3-wood, 5 hybrid, then 5 iron to pitching wedge and a few wedges. It was an interesting one to see the loft gap there between a traditional 3-wood at 15 and then into a 26 degree. It's that for a lot of people they'd sit there and go, well, you're missing a club. But as we discussed this morning, for his action, the way he holds that loft off, actually 26 degrees probably acts more like a traditional 19 to anyone else.
And potentially looking at the course and going, right, that's not an area I need to prioritise, I need to add something somewhere else.
Yeah, so. Especially around there, it's not exactly the place that you're going to need to hit a lot of long hybrids in.
So we've got, in the background, we've decided to stick one of the holes up on Albany, so if you do want us to test anything, we'll have a look at one element from a risk-reward side of it. Slightly more different in terms of speed this week than normal. I think we all know who's quicker. But we'll get a couple of hits with drivers looking at strategies and things, but then anything he wants to test, we'll use the on-course side of things to test it out. We'll grab it, hit it, answer any questions. And then the other bit coming up this weekend is the Champions Cup.
Yes.
At Concession.
Yeah, Concession. It's a bit of a different format to anything we've seen, to be honest, with anything we've seen anywhere in world golf. 3 teams of 6, US, Europe, international, playing 9-hole matches, but every hole is a point for your team.
Yeah.
It's not a traditional match play event. It's every hole matters. 9-hole matches to try and keep it moving. It's a couple of weird formats. There's a
they're doing Scotch
sixum, and then
sixum, yeah, which is both players tee off, pick the best tee shot, and then play. We call it foursomes. Across the pond, you call it alternate shot. I know we have some Americans watching.
And I don't know what the other format.
There are some singles. There are 12 singles.
There's some 12 singles on the Sunday, so it'll be interesting to see. They're only playing the back 9 at concession. That's been confirmed. They pulled some of the tees forward to try and make it interesting, but we couldn't find it anywhere. So we know Colin was flying out this morning. So I messaged him and he didn't know, and then he messaged me when he found out. So yeah, we're confirmed from the horse's mouth back 9. Yeah, when he landed, he was. Oh yeah, no, I do now know because I've had to ask the question. Right.
Right then. Well, anything in particular coming through?
There was a question regarding T150 in 52 degrees. Obviously, they only make it up to the 48. So is there anything that's similar rather than in that similar top line shape and sole characteristic rather than your traditional bladed wedges?
Yeah, I think in those heads where they tend to be the bigger cavity back style, because of where the lofts go to, 6 irons tend to be 26, 27 degrees. So the pitch wedge is 43 or 44, and then the A wedge at 48. They tend rarely to go beyond that because you then go to the outer set wedges. So in that kind of construction, there isn't really anything. And where Ping had the glide fours that had a little bit of cavity to them, so they're basically out of stock of those pending a release of new wedges in the new year. So there's not really a wedge in that category.
Right now, there's probably nothing that ticks that box.
No, not from a construction point of view. You're going to there's a CB in the or Callaway got the CB wedge, but it's not going to feel or look.
And it's not that similar, more. I guess slightly more forgiving, but not overly forgiving shape on the sole that you're probably hunting. Unfortunately, the answer's maybe a forced T150 bent back to 52 is probably the closest you could get, but is it going to be as forgiving as T150? Probably not.
Not quite, but you won't get the T150 at a loft. So.
Yeah. Jim's written in to say he's still playing the G5 in the Pro Launch Blue in the driver. They're 15 plus years old, but he still loves them. The ball flight's very high. But
yeah, off centre, out the middle. There's not an awful lot. They were a great head back then, but yeah, it's the off centre stuff where there's a benefit potentially now. Yeah.
Kate thinks we should have a long drive comp.
We are going to hit shots. I'm not comparing myself to it, but we might as well do that bit now, seeing as we've been egged on by Mrs. High Rocks.
Let me
who.
Get the shoulders.
The other bit of news for the weekend, Kate did a High Rocks and finished 11th. Won the Elite 15 in Stockholm. So yeah, PB. World records fell. Kate did a PB. All very impressive. Had to take about 5 flights to get home.
It sounded like a journey from hell on the way back.
Challenging. Yeah.
Right, I'll leave you with the iPad and I'll.
So what we're looking at here, we've got the which hole is it? Here, hole 9 at Albany, the par 5. So what we've got, and it's kind of less, the bunker is less relevant for Matt because it's 300 odd yards, much more relevant for me. But in terms of scenario where you've got trouble up one side, you're kind of a bunker that's carried, what do you think about when you're taking on a shot like this?
If I was stood here on this tee, obviously it's different when you're in the sim. But if I was stood there, I'd be thinking hit at the bunker. Right. I'd be thinking take the bunker because worst case I'm going to have to pitch it out the bunker if I get unlucky and it gets in the lip. If I stick it right, it's 3 off the tee.
Okay.
So it's going to be safety over anything else. And to be honest, if I hit it in the desert, I wouldn't care. Left over right on here, please.
So for those that haven't witnessed him hitting before, it is inhuman. Matt is verging on long driving stuff, so this that water at about 350 yards, so that's gone carried 331, total 340. So a bunker at 300 takes on. We'll swap round because it takes on a completely different meaning for a 40-year-old, 43-year-old man.
I have to say, if I was stood there and hit that one on the golf course, I'd probably be a little frustrated because I got a bit too close.
So for me, I'd be looking at if you've got trouble within range. One of the things that I learned playing with the next Ryder couple was that you don't go to the side of trouble if you've got the option. So, but it's a par 5, I can't actually get there in 2, but I'm going to burst the blood vessel trying to get there. So for me, I've got to thread it between the water and the bunker. So this is really a case of, again, you're looking at where's the worst miss. Clearly right. So I will probably stiffen up, come out of it and chuck it right. But actually, I say bunker, that looks quite a deep one. So actually probably better off, as you say, almost missing it a little bit left and having a shot out the scrub.
And I mean, you saw it with a few of the guys over the weekend. They were clearly aiming at the bunker because they knew they'd carry it, and if they hit it a little left and put it in the desert, they weren't too bothered.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, I know. Just
if only 300-yard carry, if only. Right, so let's see if I can thread it.
Oh, he's giving it a good effort. Oh, oh, it's going to get close. No, he's missed it. He's okay.
But there, and so absolutely on the distance of a pretty well hit driver. So it's still 266 carry, 292 total. I'll take 160 ball speed.
That's quick for you.
Yeah, it's not bad for an old man.
Quick for you.
Convention would say actually this is a 3-shotter. Why are you hitting the driver? Because I've just brought bunker into play. But
yeah, especially
we kind of have to.
At a slightly more
put it into
human
perspective.
distance.
If I hit the 3-wood of how far back it is.
This is the one that's going in the water, isn't it? This is just how this
Clearly,
works.
the 3-wood for safety. But in theory, the better play.
Don't tell me it's going right. Oh,
I've
no.
held on to it. I hit it really nicely. You see, let this be a lesson to you. Don't hit 3-wood for safety.
Just hit
black
driver.
Yeah.
Just hit driver.
So I took the bunker out of play. Yeah.
But at the same time, that carried 255. That's
Yeah.
only 10 yards back of
let's see if
driver.
I
It's
can
on a
actually
day where
get
it's
this-
running a bit. That's still going to get pretty close.
Let's see if I can get one in play. That shouldn't go right. I don't think I healed it. I must have healed it a bit. It's consistent.
Can't ask for 2 similar shots, can you? Talk about 2 more
Just
similar
leave the 3-wood in the
shots.
bag, Simon.
That might
Strike
need a bit of
well.
work.
Yeah. Hey who. Should hit driver more often. Right. Course strategy, definitely not the strong point. So.
Let's turn to some questions. I'll let you do some reading.
Righty-hoo. So.
Just at the top there with Niels as the first one.
So
coming
Niels, evening Niels. Regarding the ball rollback, so yeah, I mean this is plenty of subject to get our teeth into on this. So I think on this one, do you think it will impact the future construction of the balls in terms of conforming to the driver distance, but maybe spinning more / less with irons, compression, or so? I think have they confirmed it's 5%?
Not that I haven't seen an official comment, but I think that's the theory is it's 5%. It depends what 5% means.
Yeah.
It depends if they're going to get truly into in kind of more of a direct answer to this as a question, Niels. I think it's more if they start to control exactly what the brands can do in terms of compression and materials, I think you'll see a lot less diversity across the board.
Yeah.
I
mean, there are currently balls on tour. The amount of balls on tour that you would never see at retail. I mean, Callaway at one point, I believe, had 47 different ball types on the tour van. So,
that's. Don't get me wrong. We'll never get to that point. I think we are at a very strange stage right now where every manufacturer is pushing every last limit for their tour pros because they want to be the number one. I hope the PGA don't go crazy with the restrictions, and the INA don't go crazy with the restrictions that they put on the golf ball. If it's just 5% and they control that compression, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, and I think I think it's will it affect future construction? It depends whether the rules do or not. It will if they're not putting the rule that they can't go beyond certain levels, because they'll do anything they can to find some of that distance back within the laws. I think this is really a question of how far have they gone in terms of looking at what elements of the ball that they're restricting to do it. Are they just going to restrict speed proportions? Are they going to look at, one of the things you can do is aerodynamics to try and limit the distance. So it depends what route they go. I think it'll be fascinating to see what they announce. I don't think
it's going to be a simple one-page announcement of we're going 5%. I think there's going to be a 20-page document about restrictions and implementations that I'm sure someone will break down so everyone can, every normal human can make some sense out of it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where, for me, I think that there are two routes they can go. One is just doing a blanket, and then everyone's got to conform to it. But actually, how much difference it does? 5% for your average handicapper is kind of 15, somewhere around the 15 to 20 yard mark per hole. So that's getting on a couple of clubs into greens. I get at the tour level keeping courses that are viable from a scale point of view, but that's such a small percentage.
I mean, we had the conversation this morning about actually if you rolled that out for some of the year but not all of the year, there'd probably be some logic to it. We were looking at some of the past winners of the Open and well, all four majors, and you look at the two that are particularly fiddly golf courses in the sense of any UK British Open event and the Masters, they're always won by people that don't, well, not always, but 90% of them are won by people that don't hit it a long way.
Yeah.
But then you get the US Open and the US PGA. Every single one of those guys is always in the top 5 or 6 in driving distance for the week. Yeah. Every single year. So I think for certain events, you could roll it back to try and make it a little more interesting. But I think there's an argument that actually just let them go, because it hasn't changed the results.
Yeah, true. The longest hitters are still going to be the longest hitters. Yeah. You're still going to hit it 100 yards past me.
All we've done is we've just made that final number 5% shorter. It hasn't actually changed changed the gap.
We were chatting to Nick, one of our fidders, who's just left, and we were going, having a brief chat about this. He said, well, surely one other route you can go is limit loft on wedges, make 56 the highest degree loft, because then you're asking someone to be more skillful to get out of trouble. Are you going to forward as many pins if you know that you've got a tougher shot back? Is that a way of going to kind of try to control the best players in the world? But then the best players in the world, like we said, Usain Bolt they didn't make him run 110 meters just because he's quick. So is this just the inevitability of golfers getting fitter and faster and stronger and the equipment getting better and the synergy being just that much better?
And we just have to accept that it is what it is. I think that's the way we have to go.
I was just scanning through to see if there are any other questions on the there are a couple of these. I love Turtle. Has Stu gone to live? If he has, I hope he's taken a big pay. There are a couple of quite amusing ones in here. Alex Ward, if you rolled Matt's ball back to roughly the maximum carry of an airflow practice ball, I think I'd have a chance in a long drive comp against him. I think it's about the only way. Tom Bushell, can we have a chipping challenge?
No, Tom, we can't. We'll leave that for another day.
He's got some silly trick shots going on as well.
We'll leave that.
Showboat in a bay.
We'll leave that for another day.
Nick Elkin, T200 or P790 for higher ball flight?
T200.
The T200 probably holds spin.
It's the very short answer to that.
Yeah.
Spin's a little more. Probably, the launch between the two is very similar. Similar base loft. Yeah. But T200 does just create a 300, 400, 500 RPM more.
Oh, we could actually.
Just give them
a
test.
Actually hit a couple. You can do a couple of questions and I'll put that together.
Here we go. This is when we've both stood here and agreed that it's T200, and inevitably it'll be a 790, and we'll both look like fools. Andy asks, graphite design DI versus VR. How much lower is the launch with the VR? Both with soft handles and stiffer tips. Love the DI, but wondering whether the VI would be too low launch and spin. What do you reckon, Simon? I know we haven't really done too much.
So I'm just trying to find is there a T200 next?
We haven't done too much with the VR as of.
So what was the full question?
The VR versus the DI.
Yeah.
How much lower is launch with the VR versus the DI? Obviously, it's not going to be a huge amount because it all comes down to players' timing.
It's very launch-wise is very, very marginal. The VR will spin. It's designed to be a bit more spinny. There's a softer tip, and that. And the one thing from a bend profile point of view alone, just to alter launch angles is really small, unless you're going one extreme to the other. Thank you, James. So it's more that the VR has a softer tip, will spin a little bit more. That's going to be the more noticeable thing, or should spin a bit more. Actually spins less for some players. So, but it's a more responsive tip. We tended to find the VR is a better fairway shaft.
Yeah, just helps launch it a little more than the DI. Another one coming in from Chris. Hey chaps, wondered how driver shaft length affects distance. I appreciate it's a bit more complicated due to weight changing, but interested in your thoughts on optimal shaft length. Is there one?
Yeah, I'm just moving this to a relevant shot into the green. Optimal shaft length is just going to be different player to player. It's really what's the maximum length you can control and get speed with. A bit like shaft weight, you can go too heavy or too light. If you go too short, you lose a bit of speed. But for some players, a standard length drive, it just can't get strike, so you lose efficiency. So lengthwise, it's really a question of what's the maximum. No, but it is. It's what's the maximum length you can control and get contact with. If you lose strike, then you've lost ball speed, you've lost spin efficiency, you've lost direction. So that's why average length on driver on tour is shorter than the average
and
retail
it's getting shorter and shorter every single year. Right, just let Simon get set.
Going to check the loft.
Just checking the loft to make sure they're both comparable. Dave asks, what's a good gapping for a hybrid carry? For a hybrid between a 4-iron carrying 210 and a 3-wood carrying 260, 270. I'd be somewhere in
around 240 or
somewhere around that 235, 240. But
this is a height question, isn't it?
Yes.
So
we can edit that and just pop the height on there.
Yeah, I'll pop the height on there.
If it wants to play ball. Top right there.
Yeah,
you have to tick one off.
Right.
So what have we got first up? This is 790.
790.
First
yeah.
up. Okay. And that's, I assume, the same, well, as close to the same spec as what you're used to.
Yeah.
In terms of CC115.
Yeah.
Oh, just a set of those, sir.
I'll quit while I'm heading that one. that was well hit. So
it's a fair test.
What are we looking at? 4.7 on spin.
41 peak height in
41 yards. Goes quite high.
Higher than I was expecting.
Yeah. This one's slightly. That was a little more loft than the standard.
Okay.
These should
week.
both be 28.
Yeah.
So I'll just make
And what
sure.
was that one? 29. Sorry.
28.
Oh, it was 28.
Yeah.
Okay. And what have we got here?
I've been at half a degree, 27.5.
27.5. Interesting to see what happens. In theory, we've both gone for the fact if it will spin a little more in the peak height, it'll be ever so slightly higher.
Yeah, should spin a fraction more. I mean, that was probably more the thing in terms of rather than launch anglings, I would say I'd expect more spin. But having said that, that's actually spun quite well. So.
Yeah.
You know what this shows? I should stick to iron demonstrations.
Yeah, you should do the irons, I'll do the driver, and we might make a good team.
Ah, I missed the green. This just means it'll take ages to put the data up because the ball's still moving.
Ball rolls and rolls.
Yeah, there we go, 5. So maybe a little open on the face.
Give us one more, because you did fade it a little more than that first one.
Height, very similar, but the spin quite different.
Yeah, very different characteristics.
Made sure that one hasn't gone right. Very successfully as well.
One right, one left. I'm going to suggest whatever swing like that is not the answer. So on a smothered one, which I know that's harsh to call it a smothered one, it's curved 4 yards in the air, but on the one that's just turning over, you are same spin, but it's clearly launched lower because the flight is much lower.
So I think that's probably the key then. The tailor-made launch is higher but spins less. The Titleist launch is lower, spins more. So actually peak height, tailor-made, but spin Titleist.
There we go. Answers that question. Right, I'll let you get back to the questions. You can do some reading.
So club specs, James Ford club specs. Which club do you mean in terms of that? And I'll answer that. Let's see. Mike T. Afternoon, Mike. New ones are great. Not had a chance to test properly, but looks like 150 is flying higher with a softer landing angle versus the old ones, which had a stronger loss, no loss of distance. Even better, no question, just telling us how well their clubs are going. Thank you, Mike. Much appreciated. Chris Parker, do you guys concisely try and create lag in the downswing? And thank you for another great show. Thank you very much. Do you try and create lag in the downswing?
Not actively. I'm not thinking about trying to create any extra angles and lag. It's one of those, I get quite an aggressive set on the way back, and that's something I've always had. I'm quite a aggressive
Quite an
wrist
early
hinge.
set, yeah.
And then I just hold onto that. I'm not trying to create any more in that downswing. When you look at certain guys on tour, and there is that. Sergio was always the one, right? He'd have next to no lag at the top of the backswing, and then all of a sudden it would be
really deep.
He'd be hitting his ear on the way down. Look, there's benefits to both ways about it, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the answer is to try and create lag on the way down, because I think it could create more issues in other parts of the golf swing, because it can change how your arms move and the timing.
I'd say for me it's more about freedom through hands and arms. I think if you're accelerating and if you're using the rest of your body the right way, then you can free your hands up. You can naturally create more lag. I think some players will, the stronger your body rotation, the more lag you can have, because you see your body turn, that squares it up. If you're more static with the body, you're going to lose the lag a little bit more through impact, because otherwise you're never going to square the face up. So I'm sure Stuart would give a different answer to us there. But it's something that I'm not sure I would want to be thinking about creating lag a lot. I prefer the feeling of freedom, because if your hands and arms are tight, you can't create any lag. So build it naturally and freely, and then it happens in a repeatable way, would be my feeling. And Stuart's probably cringing at that answer.
Dave's suggesting I should hit 5-iron to your driver.
No, Dave, because that is even more humiliating than hitting it 100 yards shorter than his driver when his 5-iron goes at the same ball speed as my driver.
Yeah, that did actually. Yeah, that's the case earlier.
Which
when
is a
tested.
distinct possibility.
Oh, I wonder if I can get that nearer 5-iron moving at the same ball speed.
He's got a blade 5-iron to use now, so we'll see whether we can strike
I might need the 4-iron.
I'll move the tee position, which I think is.
I'd like to point out these aren't my clubs. I'm getting the excuse in early.
I'm going to go back to a. I'm going to go back to a tee position where that bunker isn't in play for me. Hopefully. Sorry, the mouse is just being a little bit unresponsive. There we go.
Can I clear 230?
Right. So can he get 230 in the air with a 5-iron? Chances are, quite possibly.
That's always the perfect answer, isn't it? Oh, not low, I won't. Ow.
But there's your course strategy, 5-iron off the tee.
That's too spinny. Let me have another go.
Give you another one with that.
Let's try and turn one.
So, Martin Williams, when will the new Vokey wedges be coming out, please? Well, allegedly there are some new Vokey wedges. March.
229, that one carried, just for note, off the bottom.
So putters wedges tend to follow on later than the woods and iron launches. So most wood and iron launches are going to be end of January, early February. But the wedges will be around March time. Late Feb, early March. Pretty good though.
242, 157.
240 with the 5-iron.
Right, give me that 4-iron. I want to hit the 160 number.
We'll let him have a 4-iron, because that's slightly fairer.
160. 160 is quick for you as well.
I love turtle. You just gone way up in my estimations from that comment. That's brilliant. I'm going to say this so that Stuart knows what you said. You said, rumour Stu to live fallen through due to demands for Grecian 2000. Good man.
There you go. There's the one to beat.
Could you see driver length for Mike T? Could you see driver length increasing from 45 to 46 inches to counter the ball rollback?
No.
I can't.
Is the simple answer. I just don't think it's a. I think the guys on tour lose too much from a accuracy standpoint. They'd rather sacrifice the 10 yards and hit it straight. I
should actually do 3-wood for this.
No, because
we know I can hit driver beyond that.
Okay. But you can't get it quicker than 162 on the ball speed.
No, but I can hit it with less speed, less spin rather.
258,
can I get my 3-wood past a
275.
4-iron for you? Right. Maybe a little low on the face.
It's going to be close. Oh, you got the advantage of lower spinning head.
That's a relief. There we go.
Oh, you
Done
beat
you
me
by 10.
You beat me by 2 yards in the air.
Yep, I'll take it. A win's a win.
with a
wood, yeah.
with a 3-wood.
Yeah, win's a win.
With a low spin 3-wood.
Right. So yeah, I think the driver length side of thing, I think with going back to that question with the ball roll back, I think because if they roll the ball back, then it's where the course setups, they're going to go more for as much speed as they can. There are some players going a little longer on driver shaft length, but ultimately keeping in play is still a massive, massive plus on tour. So
I mean, JT went longer with the VF that he put in this year, and did he see that much? Okay, he gained a couple mile an hour of ball speed, and when he's on with it, he looks as quick as most guys on tour there are, but when he's off, he can miss that thing by a long way. So I would be inclined to say they'll test it, and most of them will stick where they are.
yeah,
You might see a slight increase from maybe 44.5 to 44 3/4, or some of them going back to 45. And then I can't see many of them going up to 46.
I think you got the one that did change. Will now be best part of a couple of years back. Will Zalatoris went from 44.5 to 45.5, and put on 10 to 15 yards. But he was one of the best drivers out there. So he's keeping it in play, and his technique is stable enough to cope with that extra inch without losing too much dispersion. So I think it's not going to be all of them by any stretch of the imagination. Norwegian Warhound, would there be any noticeable ball flight differences between Dynamic Gold R300 and Modus 130 in regular? Like the weight in the R300, but wondered if the Modus would give a bit more flight with the soft tip.
Marginally, yes, but we are talking marginally. It all depends how it times. I think is the main thing. It just depends on how it times for you, because they are very different in feel. Because of the softer tip, they are very different in feel. So it's one of those. There's no, as is always the case with any slight shaft changes, there's never a simple.
In something like steel, I mean, the Modus will feel firmer because the midsection is that much firmer, and the butt section's firmer. The thing is, for the amount of, in a steel shaft at those weights, the amount of difference in bend to facilitate a noticeable change in ball flight, as Matt said, it's to do with delivery, and the Modus going to be a little bit higher balance than the Dynamic Gold in the
so
R3.
I played Dynamic Gold X1s. I then changed a couple of years ago to Modus 130X. Same heads, saw half a degree launch change, and picked up 500 spin. So it was more, for me, it was more spin. So flight changed, spin, flight did change, but not from a pure launch. It was just the flight, the look of the flight definitely changed. But it definitely felt softer.
And sorry, missed that one first time around. Alex Ward, can we get a few shots with the heaviest iron setup followed by a few of the lightest? Interested to see the difference. There's going to be a vast difference in dead weight here. So
an X7
in an X7 that's at 137, 138 grams, and we can, I mean, in steel we can go down to 75. In graphites we can go down to 45. I guess, well, if we get the Jones Zelos 7 and then the Acura, the 40i, I guess. Quite an interesting difference this is going to be.
What head should we throw through this? Should we give ourselves half a chance and put something a little forgiving on? Or?
Well, we could put the 790 on.
Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Which end do you want to start?
Heavy.
Heavy. Okay.
Yeah. I'll let you do the test on this one.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I see how this works. Make me look like a fool when that IS4 goes in.
We'll leave it on this tee shot view, just so we're not flicking around too much. But I think with this, I mean, this is exceptionally extreme. Even this.
I'd like to point out I almost put a set of these in play last year, so in theory, it shouldn't feel too strange. But that is then when I started hurting my elbow, so maybe there's a...
So I mean, this is the kind of setup we have maybe done a couple of sets with these shafts in over the last few years. So unless you've got an awful lot of basically just raw strength, it's worth me hitting one off and see what someone who's built like a stick insect does, versus you've got much more powerful physique, much more powerful move. You can kind of get that working. Whereas, you know, this is like being a 12-year-old and picking up your dad's club for me. So you can make that work. I'm just going to swing. So for me, it just goes, I move and the club just back
doesn't.
there somewhere. So like that's gone off. So by getting stuck behind, that's dropped there, then I've gone underneath. So that's gone off, 6-3 on spin. 164, that's 20 yards short of where a normal 6-iron for me would be. So that's what very heavy does.
Let's see what the Zelos does for you. It's more your speed, isn't it?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we should actually give the lighter ones to Matt because he might break them.
Oh, where's the fun in that? I promise I won't swing too hard at.
So do you want to go first or shall I go?
Yeah, why not?
Order?
Oh my, this is, yeah, okay.
So with these, if it just, for us, it's a case of just swing and let the result happen, because the problem is that someone like you or I can manage the result, so it's just trying to swing.
Oh, I fetched it, sorry.
So it'd be interesting to see.
I had to slow that down because I was very concerned, because that is like a fishing rod.
Yeah, so where did your previous one go? Was it 210?
210, yeah, so I was 5 yards back.
So you've kind of managed things. I'm just going to try and just move. Yeah, so if I just fire onto the lighter weight,
Just goes left and left.
So
There's a few guys over the weekend that would have liked to have been there.
wrapped around. So yeah, massive left spin axis, 2000 left spin, but really because at this weight, let alone when we go to the graphite, as I get halfway down, there's nothing to hit against, so I just overpower and flip it left. Matt, on the other hand, is too instinctive and just adjusts to everything. So
unfortunately, I get two waggles to get a feel, and it's like, oh no, I'm in trouble now. Get the heebie-jeebies and back out of it.
But ultimately, any golfer will manage things on course. You'll find a way of making them work. Yeah, I'm just trying to just swing.
I spent many years playing with clubs that were nowhere near fitted correctly. So when I was growing up, are you sure?
I mean, this might not be the wisest thing in the world. But, bearing in mind, so this is now almost 100 grams lighter than the first one. This is a good 90 grams lighter than the first one we hit.
Oh my, yeah, that was toey, and I almost dropped the club.
So what's quite interesting with it though is seeing how, and that will have gone, that's just gone higher and shorter, and so for you as you go lighter,
I just can't control. I can't swing at it.
it just you manage the face onto it, but it just goes higher. So whereas for me, because I've got more rotation in the swing,
you just go and go and go
left.
Yeah.
So that and the Zelos for me both go pretty much the same place.
Over your left shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the answer is for you, X7 is far too heavy, and you're going to be right, and the other two are too light. But
yeah, so there are certain players like for me, it's right left. For you, it's more how much you've got to. You'll always manipulate and manage it through the ball.
Yeah, for me, it's front back. For you, it's left right.
Yeah.
I think probably the best way to. But that comes down to swing things.
Yeah. Dave Hurley, why not limit the CC size of the head on the driver and face thickness? They're going, the ball's the bit that there's been kind of earmarked as that was the trigger for everything. So when the Pro V1 came in all those years back, that was the bit that suddenly was a complete game changer in terms of distance. So, and it's going to be easiest and probably least costly for them to go down that route. So there's still been a lot of R&D and spend put into Golf Point Callaway, putting 75 million into their ball plants and ball development the last couple of years. But that pales into insignificance relative to the amount of hardware change since they already limited the driver heads back in 2003. So.
Yeah, I think you limit driver head, fine, but that doesn't change it's whether or not it makes enough change across the whole game, the amount of limitation you'd have to have, whether or not it would make how much would you have to change to be able to see a measurable distance change. I think they'd just get to a point where you'd actually just have no drivers in the golf bag and everyone would be playing a 2-wood.
Well, mini driver, someone already out there using it,
And that's all you'd be able to have from a distance rollback point of view. So I think they have to go down the ball route at least as that initial step.
I think even if you limit the size of the face, they're actually at the point now with fairway woods where there's as much, if not more speed proportionally than drivers, because of over a certain loft, they're not limited. So actually fairway woods are almost now hotter than a driver. If they put a fairway wood face on a driver head proportionally, then it would become illegal. So, Mike T, how about a graphite shaft versus steel shaft in similar weight comparison? We'll do that one shortly. Matthew Priestley, have you seen the 11 Apex CB in hand? I thought that potentially could be the closest to a T150 at 52 if they made that one. Well, the CB is essentially, it's just a single piece pitch wedge head. So actually something like a T150, T100, there's a little bit more tungsten in the heel and the toe. It's a bit more blade-like. You're almost moving closer to something like the Vokey wedge construction, just with a pitch wedge shape. So not a lot of difference, but it's almost closer to your conventional, I think, out of set wedge. Ben Rathmell, any thoughts about certain pros like Adam Scott talking about driver head / performance to go with rollback or instead of? I'd rather see ball stay the same and have bifurcated clubs. From an industry point of view, part of the sales of clubs is based on the fact that Rory's using it, or Adam Scott's using it, or Shigeki Matsuyama's using it. So part of the marketing, the whole engine of the industry is based around that kind of promotion. I personally like the fact that in golf you can play, there's still tour prototypes around, but you can play the same clubs, you can play the same ball. I'd actually rather see, you can't do nothing, but I'd almost rather see nothing happen. I think if we limited it to where it is now and said, right, this is the fastest ball that you can have, you can't gain any more yardage, I don't think the game's in a bad place where it is, but ultimately golf has had to come up with the reality that players are athletes now and they're just hitting it further. I don't think there's an ideal scenario, really.
I mean, every brand will now be testing with these new balls to push the limit on heads. I mean, they make tour heads anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, every brand makes a tour head pretty much. Some brands advertise the fact they make tour heads, some brands don't.
Yeah.
It's just going to be the same thing. I think if you go down the route of really pushing them into tour pros have to play something completely different, I think it might just alienate the average weekend golfer that wants to watch a Saturday or Sunday tournament going, well, I don't recognise any of that stuff because I've never seen it because it's not what I'm used to seeing.
Does that also take away some of the, some of the reason we watch the tour pros and the guys? It's not a game that, well, okay, you can, but it's not a game that any of the rest of us can play. But they're doing it with the same equipment. And does actually changing their equipment and making it regulated in a different way, does that actually take away some of the wonderment of seeing them hit a 340-yard drive, or feather in a long iron into a pin, or because they're doing it with basically with the same equipment. It's not a completely different set of regulated clubs. So I think on the club side of things, I'd rather see that stay the same than do something with the ball, because I think there's a greater appreciation of their skill level because they're using the same clubs.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think you get to a point where you take skill out of it, and you don't admit these are the best 200 guys on the planet at this game. End of conversation. And we still have to remember that the reason these guys are pros is because they are the best players of this game there are currently out there. Yeah. Let's not take that away from them.
Simon Harper, good evening. I love watching your content. Thank you for watching. How easy would it be for my local pro to switch out the current Dynamic Gold 105 S300 to either Modus 120 stiff or Dynamic 120 S300? I think that depends on how good a club maker your local pro is, and that's without being flippant as well. I think it's certainly possible to get hold of the shafts, but the one thing to be conscious of is if the person building is not as proficient as we'd like them to be, then the consistency of that build is going to be what's going to suffer. So that would be the only word of caution that I would have on that. It's certainly possible for them to do it, though. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's the fairest way to phrase
Michael
it.
Barber, hi guys, do you get any requests to be fitted for the Autoflex shaft, and what's the secret behind it? Matthew, what is hidden career technology?
Are there requests for it? Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, ever since the first buzz about it during COVID, I think it hasn't stopped. I mean, the fact they brought another colourway out, they brought the yellow one out this year, says that they're still going strong.
Alongside the rainbow and the
I think they realised that pink wasn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea, and yellow, and the rainbow definitely wasn't. So then they turned to yellow, but it does still look a little bit like a lightsaber, like it should be in Star Wars. The technology behind it, look, I mean, they call it hidden technology for a reason. There is very, very few people that know truly what goes on in that. Depending on who you speak to within the industry, you get different answers. Different manufacturers have cut it apart to try and understand it, and no one really knows. No. Even the guys that we've spoken to that have been on the channel have said we've looked at it, we've taken it apart and really tried to understand it, and we just can't get our heads around it. So it is.
I think consensus is it's to get as soft as it is. It's got to be good material. The material quality certainly seems there. I think the thing with Autoflex, it got hot during lockdown when everyone was on the internet and couldn't do anything, and as a product, if lightweight, slightly counterbalanced, soft feel. So this one is that soft that it creates a little bit more recovery of the head, and it adds a lot of spin. So you generally have to go a lower spin head or a lower loft in order to make it work relative to a vertical's conventional shaft. That's really its USP, in my opinion. I think the lighter weight and slight counterbalance can help a bit of club speed if that profile and that balance profile suits you. If not, you get hit all over the planet. And actually it's too light for some players in terms of timing and speed generation. So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It's, to be fair to it, has still retained some luster post. Once people have been able to get out on course and use it and compare it, it still compares in the right hands favourably. It still produces some good results. But
I mean, there's a reason we still have
still
some go through the workshop, right? They still are, in certain scenarios, they still are number one.
Yeah. And thank you for the question. Parks, I think that's how you pronounce it. Parks Zero, good evening, pretty new to golf and quite a high handicapper. Recently got fitted for a driver, and the person who fit me said I swing down on my driver quite a lot. Any tips to hit up? This is probably one for Stuart in particular. From a fitting point of view, a neutral upward angle of attack is definitely preferable with the driver, but it's probably likely to make you much better with the irons. So there is a sort of over-compromise to make there. At
the same time, I would argue that, assuming it's not too downward, that you really are sort of 6, 7 or 8 degrees down. I think a couple of degrees down at a stage where you're a higher handicapper getting into golf, it's not an issue, assuming that the fitter does the correct job. Because there's a lot of guys we get come through here that are 2, 3, 4 degrees down, and we still find them a result that is as good as possible for that golf swing. I think it's just important that if you've been through the process, that whoever followed that process with you and did the fitting was someone that was very much in tune with what you want to. Yes, okay, moving to something that you get more weight towards the back off to allow you to hit up on it a little more. Yes, great, long term. But I think an argument that actually you can still get a pretty well optimized golf club whilst hitting 3, 4 degrees down on it with driver. That's still there. You've just got to get the right combination.
And I think that in terms of the one reason Matt and I are sort of skirting around this one slightly is that neither of us are coaches. No. And that's one of the things that in fittings is a really key thing to note, is that yes, there are certain pointers that we can give people, but we don't want to start getting into a lesson in a fitting because that's not our area of speciality. So there could be multiple reasons why you're creating a negative angle of attack, and I wouldn't want to speculate on an answer because there is a certain kind of throw enough of something at the wall and some of it will stick, in that we could say something that has relevance to someone else's swing and not yours. So I wouldn't want to offer a bit of advice without knowing anything about your swing. The fact that you're in golf and watching the channel is great, but I would seek someone who can give you a proper opinion based on what you're actually doing, rather than, I'd love to be able to offer some advice, but I don't want to give the wrong advice. So sorry for dodging that one. But definitely, Stu's got a challenge. So Stu has plenty of challenges. Stu's got his own channel. There's a load of content on there. He's, that's coming from a point of knowledge on the swing and swing mechanics. So Intelligent Golf Performance, that you'll find his channel on YouTube.
He's down in the comments somewhere, I do believe. I've just seen his face.
He's watching. Good evening, chaps. Good evening.
So give a click on his.
How's your toy cars doing, Stu? Are you going well? And no doubt well, because he's on the channel and he seems quite happy that we abused him earlier on. So yeah, thanks for watching. Miss Ali Nerd, I went for a fitting. They put me into a PXG XP iron, 50 gram A-flex cipher with the heaviest possible club head weight, 16 gram I think. That's the different weights that PXG put in the back of the heads. What do you think that indicates about my golf swing? Thank you. Well, the XP heads are light anyway. Yeah. So that's possibly where they've gone the heavier weight, because the XP, the 6 iron head is the equivalent of a 5 iron weight in the P. So that heavier weight could be to get the shaft length down to a representative length. That would be what I'd be assuming from that.
Yeah, it's difficult, obviously, without seeing any any other data or footage to be able to comment.
But the XP is a very forgiving head, lots of ball speed, strong lofts, so it'll be to optimise distance, raw yardage. Obviously lighter weight shaft in principle, you can speed, but obviously depending how you're swinging it, that's to suit your swing dynamics. But it doesn't sound like a funky setup, and I think the heavier weights to get shaft length down. It's just a question of at the clubs you've got at the lofts they're at is what the flight's like. That would be the only question I would have, but certainly a lot of that seems to make sense. Paladin, I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong. In a set of ES21 wedges, is it worth to upgrade to an SM9 or a T24 set?
No, because they will feel very different. The ES21 was a very particular, that real process they went through, really optimizing that center of gravity for every head. Okay, they do it to some extent with the others, but not to the same extreme that they did with that ES21. I would be very inclined to say, unless the grooves have gone, because you played a lot of golf, I would be inclined to just leave them as they are, because there's not really anything out there right now that will feel and look even close.
And the ES20 was a hollowed out head, had a hollow construction, black head shape. You can say that the strike and the interaction of the centre of gravity and the ball will be different to that than anything else. So if they're working, then are not worn out,
don't touch them.
Stick with them.
Primary difference between.
I was reading Stuart's comment. Just got a beer in hand to cool me down from the Florida sunshine.
All right, enough of that.
Thank you. John Puckett, what is the primary difference between TT
True Temper X1?
X100, sorry, and the Taurus UX1? I tried the Taurus UX7, loved the feel, but my body started breaking down after 6 weeks because I'm 170 pounds.
Don't worry, John, mine started breaking down after even less. So don't worry.
I played with about 5 swings. So, primary difference?
Weight sorting?
Not a lot.
Really?
Essentially exactly the same. It's exactly the same shaft, and unless you're buying them in a set, it is not worth it. Yeah. Because they are weight sorted and then packed as sets. So really, it's just that they are the tightest tolerance on weight. So True Temper are a weight company. Rife have always been a frequency company, but they are the most tightly sorted for weight of anything. So it's the best match set from True Temper you'll get from a weight point of view, but that is it. Yeah. In a nutshell. Here's one for you, Ben Irwin. What do you think of PXG as a brand?
Pass. No, I do like their stuff. They do some very good stuff. They're very, they have a story. Their story, they stay to their story. The product works for their story. One of their heads will always be something that interests us. It's often the T head. The T head performance off that T head is impressive. Yeah. The
P's always going to be a strong. For me, the irons are where they've always shone in terms of product. That's where
the woods and the hybrids are always.
They're kind of hit miss. Yeah. When they're good, there are some really good performing clubs, but actually, they can be quite ordinary. It's kind of interesting how. I think as a brand, they've muddied the water somewhat with how they've gone about things the last few years. in terms of pricing changes and where they're pitched at. But actually, iron product have always been very good.
Yeah.
Wedges, little hit and miss, woods, little hit and miss, but the irons have always been very good.
You did the video on the channel the other day comparing the three middle PXG.
Yeah, the CB, options. The 317T, and then the 311P. Yeah.
Which I think that kind of shows that they have a story. They're very good at their story. They're very consistent with their story. But you know that video will truly give you an answer as to PXG as a brand, as to how good they are. Yeah.
So we've got. Thank you for all the questions coming in. We've got a 5 minutes left, so we're going to crack through as many as we can, and then just do the graphite and steel comparison. And Stuart says he does have daily challenges. Brian McAllister, make courses less easy. First time Scottish Open at Renaissance, pros murdered the course. Course has progressively been modified. Difficult bunkers, narrow fairways, deeper rough. Now hardest on tour. You see, this is where I think the deep rough question is slightly misdirected. I don't think deep rough is what stops. It makes it hard, but it's certainly from the distance point of view, it doesn't actually stop. You look at Bryson winning the US Open. Look at US Open winners. Thick rough means the big hitters win. Yeah. You look at the Masters and the Open Championship. Yes, there's thick rough at the Open, but the ball runs off. It runs off greens and down slopes. At the Masters, it runs off away from greens. So you can't just black one at a green and it stays next to it. I think a lot of the challenges and the things, if you look at course design, there are people who would say, you know, thick rough actually ruins it. You want the ball to run away from the fairways and run into trouble rather than actually stopping it going very far. I don't think thick rough is the answer to everything, but I do think that good course design and so potentially limiting loft on the wedges, I think actually is a good way, personally.
I think ultimately if you're hitting driver that far and you've got 100 yards in, if you're in the thick rough or in the fairway, you've only got a lofted wedge in your hand. The thick rough don't matter.
Yeah. True. Norwegian Warhound, thanks for the info. Is looking at it from a peak and a spin standpoint. I'll now be keen to try the Modus. Great. Ben Owen, what balls would you recommend for winter? Well, they plug anyway, so
it doesn't matter.
Cheap ones, because you're going to lose them in the fairway sometimes. That's what I found. It's a feel thing. I think the spin control and the short game control has less of an impact. I think if you're playing something like a Pro V1 style ball, then you could quite feasibly drop back to, say, TaylorMade the Tour Response or the Bridgestone, the RXS, the RX series, where you still keep the premium cover and some of the spin on the irons, so flight consistency. I think if you change ball too much, then you're going to lose distance control with the wedges. So one notch down, because let's face it, you can't feel anything in winter when it's this cold anyway. So, but I don't necessarily see the need to change too much. Purely personal opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
Miss Alina, loft would set 2 degrees weaker.
That will combat the
Makes
fact
sense.
that
that helps the flight. Yeah. I love Turtle. I hadn't realised Stu is in his retirement home. Enjoy the beer and get matron to tuck you in. So this man's a genius. Dave Hurley, would a lighter shaft in irons make you feel the head more, especially in transition?
Not necessarily.
Definitely maybe is the answer.
Yeah, not necessarily. That more is a swing weight conversation than anything else.
In theory, lighter shaft with the same head weight, in theory, yes, but the balance point changes a bit, so it's a bit more complicated than that. Let's crack through a few more. Thanks, Turtle, from Stu. Sam Fillets, looking for a combo set of P770s and 790 in the longer irons. How would you guys go about it and loft differences to solve the gapping?
It's very person to person, because if someone hits it a little flatter and then needs the 790s turned up a little bit, then actually that would gap it to the 770s, but in other situations you might need 770s de-lofted to hit the same as the 790s. So it's one of those. There's not a simple answer to that one. It kind of applies both ways, just depending on how you fit in.
I'm just going to do the graphite and steel very quickly because we said to Mike we'd do that.
Tony asks, hi, in both of your opinions, what irons have made the biggest improvement this year since their predecessor?
I think T150 versus 100S.
Yes, agreed. I think the 100S, was a popular option that was pretty good, but I think 150 is just in a category of its own right now.
I think stability across the face.
There's very few options that, if you're in that bracket, there's very few other options that can
So going to start
keep up.
Steel shaft. These are actually very, very similar weights at around a 110. So from a performance and a feel point of view, with steel shaft has a thinner walls, you generally get a little bit more responsiveness from the shaft relative to weight. Graphite's going to have more material, so a slightly thicker wall, feel a bit firmer. But balance-wise,
the straightest one he's hit all day.
balance-wise, there's still a little bit of feel for the tip end.
Niall McCloskey says best golf channel on YouTube. Thanks for that.
Very
Niall.
kind, thank you.
Very much appreciate that. Nick Elkins says thanks for the iron test. And regards from Munich.
Guten Tag. So, yeah, one thing you do notice, graphite shaft are the same weight, there's just less movement because of that extra structure. Just more material there, so it's going to play and feel a little firmer. But because there's more material, it's less tip balance because they haven't had to reinforce the tip. So for me, that means left. But it's generally steel, the graphite's actually going to feel a little tighter at impact than steel.
Tony asks, what bracket of handicap do T150s fit into?
A lot.
And I would argue the answer is a lot.
Yeah, I think T150's, you know, a elite golfer who's looking for a little bit more performance off the face, down to, you know, you get some very strong ball striking from a 18 handicapper who just again needs the same. Some higher handicappers don't need the scale of head. Particularly if you kind of pick it off a little bit more, you don't need lots of mass down the bottom to kind of stop you digging in. So sometimes actually a more compact head works for our higher range handicap as well. So I think they're a very versatile head.
Last two,
Time
Dave.
for the last couple. Yep.
Dave Hurley's requesting a 2-hour Christmas special with all the staff playing 9 holes.
That'll take much longer than 2 hours.
Yeah, far longer.
We've got something planned for Christmas week.
And Stu's being sassy.
I'll leave you for 1 week and you're overrunning. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's more questions coming in and more abuse for you. So in the middle. Thank you everyone for the input. We really appreciate all the comments and all the questions. Really grateful for all your interaction.
I believe we didn't miss any along the way.
I don't think we missed a question. We had to go back to one, but thanks for the nudge. Stuart will be back next week. I hope he gets back next week. He said he was going to be back next week. Not because I don't like Matt being involved as well, but
just doesn't want to see it going 60 yards past him.
No, it's just, you have to get used to it. But thanks again for everyone for tuning in. If you like what we do, subscribe, follow us. There are loads of other videos on the channel. Really grateful for everyone tuning in, and we'll have a great rest of the week. And we look forward to seeing you next Monday. Thanks a lot.
Cheers now.